there, Lindsay here, the Frugal Crafter. Today we got a review for the brand new Altenew Artist Grade Watercolor set. This is a brand new release from them. They recently had a set of 36 half pans. It came in a plastic case. They've had out for a couple of years, and I never tried them. They never really appealed to me. I saw people working with them, and they just seemed like they might be a little bit more opaque than I preferred for watercolors, but recently I'd been asked by a few viewers about their new metallic paints and their new artist paints, so I thought I would give them a try. And Altenew did reach out to me and ask me if I would like to have these supplies to try, and I said sure. So just want to disclose that these were given to me as a gift from Altenew, and I did say I would review them. So there you have it. And the first thing I'm going to do is just show you the box. It's a nice matte cardstock box with some gold foil. There is some information on the back. It shows you what the colors are, and it tells you that these paints have little to no granulation. So that is when granulation is kind of when you see that texture in your paint in like a wash, like ultramarine blue is a granulating color. A lot of browns are, some blacks are. A lot of your earth tones kind of granulate, just cobalt colors granulate. It's just a pretty texture, but some people don't like that, and they try to avoid granulation in their paints. Granulating paints also tend to have an opacity to them, and if you're a rubber stamper, which Altenew is a rubber stamp company, if you're a rubber stamper and you're trying to paint an image you've stamped and you want your lines to show, having a granulating color on top is probably not the look you're going for. So the tin is kind of a standard 24 half pan tin, but it does have a unique color. It's a matte purple cover or coating, and then it's got a pink, kind of a pale, kind of dusty pink color, maybe purple. It's just like kind of really pale shade of the darker color here. Screening of some of their flowers and also their branding. And I painted that. That doesn't come with it. And then you've got your typical 24 half pan set. You've got the side wing comes out pretty much straight. It might tip up a little bit, so I'm going to try bending mine down a little bit to get it to go more flat. There we go. So it's not going to crash down under the table, so your paint's not going to leak out the little thumb hole there, which is nice. Speaking of thumb holes, it does have the thumb hole in the back. I never use those, but if you do, it's there. Another unique feature is that all the edges are rolled. There's no sharp edges, which is nice. And let me pull the little tray of colors out here. The tray is also bent up, so there's no sharp edges. And one of the unique features of this that I was really impressed with is the fact that all of the color names are printed on the sides of the pan. So as of yet, they don't have any half pan refills in their store, but it would be really easy to buy one and swap it out. So that's kind of nice. The downside is these are labeled with their proprietary color names, which I guess coordinate with their markers and ink pads, because they do run a full line of ink pads, alcohol markers, water-based brush markers. So this is designed to coordinate with those. So if you're a stamper and you're using a specific paper, or using a specific ink pad, and you want to make sure everything matches, you can do that with these paints. So I thought that was kind of a nice touch, especially with folks that have been using the Altenew line and they want everything to match. So this isn't necessarily a paint set that is designed for a watercolorist to grab. It is, I think, designed for the Altenew customers to venture into watercolor and have a nice quality, reliable paint set to use. So let's take a look at the big swatches here. I took the wrappers, I just peeled them off the half pans and stuck them down into some cardstock. I drew a black line with a permanent marker, let it dry, and then I swatched over them. And I want to send a shout out to my viewer Afk, who told me about saving your wrappers and putting them on your swatches, so that way it saves you having to write stuff down, which I love. On the wrappers, you have the name of the paint, their name of the paint, and also you have pigment information, which I thought was really handy, and also very curious because I was not familiar with some of the pigments they were using, so I did some research, and we will get into that in a minute. I did find the colors to be very transparent. I did a little bit of a graded wash here, and then I did a glaze on top. The glazing was okay. I don't think you're going to be able to get a lot of glazing here because, as you can see from my lifting test, most of the colors lift right back to the paper, and this is not an expensive paper. This is a Fabriano Studio, which is what I usually use to swatch watercolors when I'm reviewing, just to kind of keep apples to apples. So it's not the most robust paper. It's a decent paper. I didn't have any pilling. Everything lifted up pretty easy. I did have a little bit of staining on some of the colors that used a phthalo color, but for the most part, you can lift it off, which again could be a benefit to stampers that, you know, might make a mistake or might want to highlight something, so they can just easily wet a brush, wipe out where they want the highlight, blot it, and be good. So if you don't like paints that lift a lot, if you don't like paints that don't granulate, I just think it's important to know that. And if you do like those properties, then that's important to know that too. I found mixing was pretty easy with these. I just grabbed 3 cool colors and did a mix of purple, orange, and green, and then mixed them together. Got a good neutral. And then I did that with some warm primaries. I didn't notice any chalkiness. I didn't notice any like flocculation in the paints, so I'm pretty pleased with that. Now that was really curious because on a lot of these paints I was noticing the addition of PW5, which is Pigment White 5, which is lithopone, and that's generally not noted on paints, and it's used as a filler. So I was kind of looking at the colors that said they had the white in them like that. You don't see any opacity there. It doesn't look like there's white in there. That says it has white in it. That says it has white in it. That does look like it has a white in it. That looks like it's white and ultramarine blue. They have that labeled as PB27 and PW5. PB27 is your like Prussian blue. That does not look like Prussian blue. I think they mislabeled that. They also have this over here labeled as cobalt blue in the mix, but I think they mean Prussian blue in the mix there because it just doesn't look like cobalt blue. So I think there's quite a few errors in the pigment notation here, and I really don't think that they needed to indicate PW5 on much of these because there's not enough. It's not making the colors opaque, and I think it's just used as a filler or an extender. The PW5 here on its own is a very translucent white. It's barely, you can barely see it covering up the color there. It's more of a mixing white. It's an odd color to use because generally if you have a white, it's a PW6, which is a more opaque titanium white, or it's a PW4, which is more of a mixing white, which is kind of like that. But this is more of a grayish undertone where the other two are a little bit cleaner. But I really don't think it's going to add a grayishness to it, but it's just something to keep in mind. I saw PR4 in a few colors, so right here, and right there, that's kind of your classic lipstick red, but it's also a little on the fugitive side. That is, it's got an average Lightfastness, so it's not a great one. I think it's ASTM 2 or 3, so it's not great. We've got PV1 and in a lot of these. That's a neon purple color that will fade. There's also PV3 in some of these that actually darkens. It's a purple that darkens. So longevity is going to be an issue with this set. If you're painting a card and you're mailing it off to a friend and you're not expecting it to last, or you're going to have it in a sketchbook and it's going to be closed up, you're not going to have too much of an issue. However, if you're painting this to sell and be hung on a wall, you are going to have some issues, I believe. There's also PO13, Pigment Orange 13, used in a few of these mixes, and that is a really nice vibrant orange, except it's very, it's fugitive when you're using it in tints. So if you used it like a really, really full strength, strong, you'd be okay probably, but if you're watering it down with water or you're mixing it like it is in some of these colors as mixes, you can have some trouble. It's in that one, it's in that one. Is it in any of the other ones? I don't, oh, it's in that one. So just kind of something to keep in mind. I saw PB17:1. I never heard of that one before, but that's used in this color, Seashore, and that's mixed with PG7, so it might go a little bit greener over time. That had a blue wool scale of 6 or an ASTM value of 2, so it's not excellent. It's kind of the good, in the good range. And I will link references to a couple of websites I use when I'm looking up pigments that I'm not familiar with, so you can have a, you know, some information for yourself. And let's see, they use PY101 in quite a few of these colors, which is like your gamboge hue, which is fine. PY65, which is Hansa yellow, that's fine. That's a good stable color. And they also notated PY168 in a couple mixes, and I could not find any sort of information on that color. So I think that must have been a typo. Another typo that I saw is, it says PUR6. I think that's supposed to be PBR6, which is an iron oxide. There should be nothing wrong with that. I think it's strange, except now that knowing they don't want granulation, I find it strange they made this mix here of the white and PY110 rather than using like a raw sienna, which isn't very opaque. It's quite translucent. I think it'd be more translucent in this color, but it will suffice as a yellow ochre. It worked fine as a yellow ochre or a Naples yellow, but not as clean as those colors. So most of these colors are mixes. There's a few single pigment colors, but for the most part they're going to be mixes. I'm just seeing if there's anything else that is unusual about this set. Just, keep it in mind. If you're going to use it in a sketchbook, I think you're fine. If you're going to use it on a card, I think you're fine, because generally cards aren't kept for 100 years. And if they are, they would be put in like a scrapbook or something, but not for you're hanging on the wall for, 100 years in a museum type project. But you're also, a professional watercolor set of 24 is going to be $100 and up, and this one's just under 50. So, it's a case of you get what you pay for. Now, I did find, what are these the most similar to me? I found these the most similar to the Pretty Excellent paints that I reviewed a while back. They're not the same paints. These are an extruded, and I believe the Pretty Excellents are a poured pan. They also kind of remind me a little bit of the Sennelier Le Petit Aquarelle paints, which are also very vibrant. But I think the Sennelier, both of their paints glaze, their artist and their student glaze a little bit more reliably, and they don't use the same pigments. So that's kind of like a color wise. So now let's look at some things that I painted with these, because it's probably what you're here for. This was the first experiment that I did with these. I was really happy with I did a little bit of layering, not a ton. I loved how the paints moved in splashy sections. I loved the color payoff. The colors were vibrant. Really gorgeous bright colors. And of course, when you get those really gorgeous bright transparent colors, a lot of times you're dealing with dyes, and you give up some of the lightfastness to have those more sheer transparent colors. So there's that. Another thing that I did in experimenting was, I did this painting here. I did try using a little bit of the white here in the frosty glass area, just in here, to see how it would affect. It gave me a very soft veil of white, but not a lot. So I was just experimenting to see how bright I could get that, but I love the color movement. They're a lot of fun to use, and they're very easy to work with. That's something else that I wanted to mention. They are extremely easy to work with, and if you're a beginner, maybe you've been a card maker for years and you want to dip your toe into watercolors, these are going to be easy to use. I just did this landscape. Again, the colors mix good. I didn't run into any mud. Every example I've done with a limited palette, and I haven't run into mud. So I'm pretty impressed with that. I did just a couple backgrounds just to see how they would behave. These are cotton paper. This is 100% cotton. It's the Royal Mac Rains paper, I believe. This was wet into wet. I wet the area, then I put in the colors, and I love the way they blended. They've got great flow and movement. Colors are really vibrant. I intend to do some die cutting out of these pieces with some steel dies. I think that it would be nice for doing sentiments, or maybe doing some butterflies, or something like really graphic out of them. And here I did a controlled wash. It was quite streaky because I was using so many colors and wasn't giving myself enough time to transition. And then I did another layer on top, and it layered pretty well. The colors got much brighter on my second pass through, so layering is definitely possible. But you can also lift up really easily, so that just tells me there's going to be a limit to how much layering you get. And if you accidentally drop paint on your painting, and then blot it up, it is going to lift it off. Like, that's what happened on that swatch, because I get kind of, I do like a lot of splashing. When I'm painting, I'll do a lot of splashing with water, and then add color to it. And a stray splash got over there, and that's what happened there. And let's see, did I have any other examples? Yes, I do have a couple other examples to show you. This, I just stamped one of their stamps and was just fooling around. This, I tried the salt technique, so I didn't know how well it would work with how transparent the colors were, but it worked fine. Oh, there, I was just playing with some more colors. I just did some very quick doodly flowers, and I think that, not that one, but that one, I think that these are going to really satisfy a beginner painters need when they are dipping their toes into watercolors. And they do look a lot better than their student grade ones. I didn't use the student grade ones, but they looked to me like they were kind of thick and chalky, and like they would just be very frustrating to use. I think these are going to be a dream to use for any beginner. Hey, for me, they were fun to use. I really like them. I just think that you want to be mindful of the lightfastness issue of them, and ask yourself if that's important to you or not. As far as wearing, I think they have kind of an average wearing capacity. They didn't seem to, I don't feel like I'm like going through the paint really quick. They reactivated fine though, and they mixed really cleanly. So other than a light fast issue, I have no complaints about the set. I do recommend them. I think for the price, they're well priced, and I like the quality of the tin. I mean, even if you got these, if you were your first watercolors, you would not be hindered by anything that I've mentioned today as far as learning how to paint. Because if you're a brand new beginner, you're probably not going to do a botanical painting with 25 layers on it. And then when you used your paint up, if you decided you wanted to upgrade to an artist or a professional range, let's call this artist. There's no actual like legal criteria for something being called artist paints. Sorry for the noise. You know the drill if you've been here for a while. There's no criteria that indicates what artist paint versus what a student paint is, so you get a lot of paints called artist paints. These behave like an artist paint for the most part. Just a light fastness issue, and the weird pigments would not make them a professional paint. So I wouldn't call them a professional paint. You can call them an artist paint. And I think the tin is really nice. I think it's a really nice quality, and you definitely can refill them as you outgrow this set. There's probably some optical brighteners because of how bright these look in the pans, and we know because they were very honest on they were probably overly honest on their pan notations where there wasn't typos, that there is white in the mix, but I think that's honestly more of a base issue and not the pigmentation. I think it's the extender in the paint. I don't think they needed to notate that, but they did, and don't let that put you off because it doesn't make them opaque. One other thing I wanted to point out in the pigments here, because I thought this was strange, and it might be a typo, they called this one PR4 and PR101, which is kind of like that bright lipstick red, and then that brown red. Like some companies use PR101 for burnt sienna. Now PR101 can look different depending on how finely it's ground. It could be transparent, it could be opaque, it could be granulating, it could be smooth. So that they get a lot of colors out of that particular pigment, but it doesn't look like that. Looks way too bright and clean to have PR101. This one also says it has PR101 in it, and it just, these colors just seem too clean to have PR101. But I just wanted to put that out there. I'm not exactly sure that all the notations on this are correct. In fact, I know a couple of them must be wrong, because there's no way that has the ultramarine blue pigment in it. That's a phthalo blue if I ever saw one. That one says it has Prussian blue in it. I'd say that's a phthalo blue if I ever saw one. This one says it's Prussian blue, and I would say that's an ultramarine blue, or cobalt blue if I ever saw one. And they said that's cobalt, but that looks like it's got to have Prussian in it. So those are some things that they probably ought to work on when they come out with their next version, when they reprint their next labels or whatnot. But if you're getting these now, just kind of keep an eye on that. They probably didn't need to honestly put that pigment information down. But I can see how wanting to be in the artist's market, or be in more of that step above economy, step above craft paint, they wanted to do all they could to help differentiate themselves. Good paints, if you like fastness, they're fun, they're bright. If you're a stamper, they're not going to cover up your lines if you're going on stamps. So I give them a thumbs up. I mean, $50 might be a little bit pricey. I think a lot of that money is in the tin, because they do behave a lot like the Pretty Excellent paints, which are $36 for $20, but you don't get this real cute tin. You get a different cute tin. The tins, oh my word, I am addicted to the tins. I have so many sets of paints that I probably should give away, but I'm addicted to the tins because they're so darn cute, and I also just love playing with paint. So there you have it. If you have any questions, go ahead and pop them in the video description. I'll review the metallics coming up soon, as well as their water brush markers. So you can look forward to those products as well. Hey, I like them. I almost wish, it almost seems like they would get a better mark if they didn't have the pigment information, because there's so many questions with the pigment information. But as far as paints go, yeah, they're a lot of fun, very easy to work with, and I would recommend them to anyone that's not worried about the longevity and they just want to play with paint, have fun, and have good results and reliable paint. So there you have it. Thanks for watching. Please give me a thumbs up if you like reviews of art supplies, and we'll see you next time. Happy crafting!